welcome back to Grim Advice with Gretta Myers. You've entered the grimoire with 2 M's. Let's turn some pages together. Alright. Yesterday was a hard day for me. And so I could not film. It was a really bad day. Then it got better. But then it was too late to film. So I'm filming a double episode today because this weekend I cannot film at all. So we're gonna hit both of these short stories in one sitting. So I'll hit one analysis so I don't get confused. Hit the other one analysis. We're gonna call it good and it's gonna be great. So without further ado, The Old Woman in the Wood. A poor servant girl was once traveling with the family with which she was in service through a great forest, and then when they were in the middle of it, robbers came out of the thicket, and murdered all they found. All perished together except the girl, who had jumped out of the carriage in a fright and hidden herself behind a tree. When the robbers had gone away with their booty, she came out and beheld the great disaster. Then she began to weep bitterly and said, "What can a poor girl like me do now? I do not know how to get out of the forest. No human being lives in it, so I must certainly starve." She walked about and looked for a road, but could find none. And when it was evening, she seated herself under a tree, gave herself into God's keeping, and resolved to sit waiting there and not go away, no matter what might happen. When, however, she had sat there for a little while, a white dove came flying to her with a little golden key in its mouth. It put the little key in her hand and said, "Do you see that great tree? Therein is a little lock. It opens with the tiny key, and there you will find food enough and suffer no more hunger." Then she went to the tree and opened it, and found milk in a little dish and white bread to break into it, so that she could eat her fill. And when she was satisfied, she said, "It is now the time when the hens at home go to roost. I am so tired I could go to bed too." Then the dove flew to her again and brought another golden key in its bill and said, "Open that tree there and you will find a bed." So she opened it and found a beautiful white bed, and she prayed God to protect her during the night and lay down and slept. In the morning the dove came for the 3rd time and again brought a little key and said, "Open that tree there and you will find clothes." When she opened it, she found garments beset with gold and with jewels, more splendid than those of any king's daughter. So she lived there for some time, and the dove came every day and provided her with all she needed, and it was a quiet, good life. Once, however, the dove came and said, "Will you do something for my sake?" "With all my heart," said the girl. Then said the little dove, "I will guide you to a small house. Enter it, and inside it an old woman will be sitting by the fire and will say, 'Good day.' But on your life give her no answer. Let her do what she will, but pass by her on the right side. Further on there is a door, which you will open, and you will enter into a room where a quantity of rings of all kinds are lying, amongst which are some magnificent ones with shining stones. Leave them, however, where they are, and seek out a plain one, which must likewise be amongst them, and bring it to me as quickly as you can." The girl went to the little house and came to the door, and there sat an old woman who stared when she saw her and said, "Good day, my child." The girl gave no answer and opened the door. "Where away?" cried the old woman, and seized her by the gown and wanted to hold her fast, saying, "That is my house. No one can go in there if I choose not to allow it." But the girl was silent, got away from her, and went straight into the room. And now there lay on the table an enormous quantity of rings, which gleamed and glittered before her eyes. She turned them over and looked for the plain one, but could not find it. While she was seeking, she saw the old woman, and how she was stealing away, wanting to get off with a bird cage which she had in her hand. So she went after her and took the cage out of her hand, and when she raised it up and looked into it, a bird was inside, which had the plain ring in its bill. Then she took the ring and ran quite joyously home with it, and thought the little white dove would come and get the ring, but it did not. Then she leaned against a tree and waited for the dove. And as she thus stood, it seemed just as if the tree was soft and pliant, and was letting its branches down. Suddenly the branches twined around her, and were 2 arms, and when she looked round, the tree was a handsome man, who embraced and kissed her heartily, and said, "You have delivered me from the power of the old woman, who is a wicked witch. She had changed me into a tree, and every day for 2 hours I was a white dove. and so long as she possessed the ring, I could not regain my human form. Then his servants and his horses, who had likewise been changed into trees, were freed from the enchantment also, and stood beside him. And he led them forth to his kingdom, for he was a king's son, and they married and lived happily. Aww. Wholesome. Again, so we have several common occurring themes in Grimm fairy tales, because these stories were written with a purpose to teach children good morals and themes. So of course they would put recurring themes. And the recurring theme in this one, that we've seen in other stories, is that if you follow instructions and don't let anything stop you from doing what has been told to you is good and right, and doesn't harm yourself or others, and like if you're doing what's good and right, no matter how hard it is, and no matter how much other people want you to stop, you'll be rewarded. And that is definitely a good thing. However, I think it's up for each person to decide. Because sometimes these instructions are giving with kind of not a reason or explanation. And so sometimes it can be really hard to follow these instructions. And so I guess it's just up for every person to decide for themselves if they're willing to follow those kinds of instructions when it's hard. Especially if there's no reason. I can't tell you what to do. Because that is definitely a hard thing, and is a question of life. Okay, hold on. Anyway, first off, that beginning of the story, holy crap, that quite a way to begin a story. Wow. Also, just the idea that, like, if you will be provided for, the universe will provide for you, God will provide for you. That's a good, yeah, that was wholesome. Okay, and then the idea with the rings, where it was like, you need the plain ring. So sometimes I feel like, as people, we do get caught up in searching for the best thing, and sometimes really the best thing is not the shiniest, the prettiest, the smartest, the est. It's not the est. But, sometimes the thing we're searching for is not the est. But that's okay. Like, if it makes you happy, yeah. Sometimes we need to not settle, but realize sometimes our expectations are over the moon. Alright, my gremlins, on to story 2. The Three Brothers. There was once a man who had 3 sons, and nothing else in the world but the house in which he lived. Now each of the sons wished to have the house after his father's death, but the father loved them all alike, and did not know what to do. He did not wish to sell the house, because it had belonged to his forefathers, else he might have divided the money amongst them. At last a plan came into his head, and he said to his sons, "Go into the world, and try each of you to learn a trade. When you all come back, he who makes the best masterpiece shall have the house." The sons were all content with this, and the eldest decided to be a blacksmith, the second a barber, and the third a fencing master. They fixed a time when they should all come home again, and then each went his way. It chanced that they all found skillful masters, who taught them their trades well. The blacksmith had to shoe the king's horses, and he thought to himself, "The house is mine without doubt." The barber only shaved great people, and he too already looked upon the house as his own. The fencing master got many a blow, but he only bit his lip and let nothing vex him. "For," said he to himself, "if you are afraid of a blow, you will never win the house. When the appointed time had gone by, the three brothers came back home to their father. But they did not know how to find the best opportunity for showing their skill, so they sat down and consulted together, and as they were sitting thus, all at once a hare came running across the field. "Aha! Just in time," said the barber. So he took his basin and soap and lathered away until the hare came up. Then he soaped and shaved off the hare's whiskers while he was running at the top of his speed, and did not even cut his skin or injure a hair in his body. "Well done," said the old man. "Your brothers will have to exert themselves wonderfully, or the house will be yours." Soon after up came a nobleman in his coach, dashing along at full speed. "Now you shall see what I can do, father," said the blacksmith. So away he went. He ran after the coach, took all 4 shoes off the feet of one of the horses while he was galloping, and put on him 4 new shoes without stopping him. "You are a fine fellow, and as clever as your brother," said his father. "I do not know to which I ought to give the house." Then the third said, "Father, let me have my turn, if you please." And as it was beginning to rain, he drew his sword and flourished it backwards and forwards above his head so fast that not a drop fell upon him. It rained still harder and harder, till at last it came down in torrents. But he only flourished his sword faster and faster, and remained as dry as if he were sitting in a house. When his father saw this, he was amazed and said, This is the masterpiece. The house is yours." His brothers were satisfied with this, as was agreed beforehand, and as they loved one another very much, they all 3 stayed together in the house, followed their trades, and as they had learned so well and were so clever, they earned a great deal of money. Thus they lived together happily until they grew old, and at last, when one of them fell sick and died, the 2 others grieved so sorely about it that they also fell ill and soon after died. And because they had been so clever and had loved one another so much, they were all laid in the same grave. First off, it says he became a blacksmith, and yeah, sure, you can make horseshoes as a blacksmith. However, I don't think, shoeing them, isn't that a whole other profession? I don't know, it's just weird to me. Okay. Okay. The idea that you have to prove yourself is kind of hard. Sometimes. But sometimes it's necessary. I don't know. Because trust is something you have to earn. So sometimes you have to prove yourself. But testing people, I don't know. That's a hard one. Okay, and they all worked so hard and did their best because they wanted to better themselves. Not just because they wanted the house, but they wanted to better themselves, and that's awesome. I really like... for if you are afraid of a blow, you'll never win the house. He's like, if I'm too scared to do anything because I'm gonna fail, then I'm never gonna succeed. And that's true. And then, they all do these impressive, really scarily impressive things, and I'm like, what the heck? It's magic. But I really love how his brothers were satisfied with this, and they loved one another very much. And they all just stayed together. That's how you do it. When someone else succeeds, whether in the same field as you, if someone beats you out, or if someone's succeeding in another area of life, and you care about them, be happy for them? Okay, I get it. You can... Sometimes it's hard and you need a moment to be oof. I wish I was doing better, But, let that motivate you to do better, not just be petty and spiteful and be I hate them now because their life is so perfect and whatever. And I'm really? No, don't do that. That's petty. Alright, so, overarching, the theme today definitely seems to be just generally be a good person. Right? It's like, follow these instructions and like do your best and just be a good person. Alright, my gremlins, thank you for joining us for another Happily Ever After, or not so Happily Ever After. That's it for you to decide. What you decide is valid. Because you're valid. You are. Either way, this is the end for today's episode. Double episode, am I right? So tune in later and we can learn more and turn new pages together.